Welcome back to Business Week on Arise News. Nigeria's GDP grew by 2.54% year-on-year in real terms in the third quarter of 2023. This growth rate is higher than the 2.25% recorded in the third quarter of 2022 and higher than the second quarter 2023 growth of 2.51%. The performance of GDP in the third quarter of this year was mainly driven by the services sector, which recorded a growth of 3.99% and contributed 52.7% to aggregate GDP. The agricultural sector grew by 1.3% from the growth of 1.34% recorded in the third quarter of the same period last year. Of course, a week ago, the NBS, Nigeria National Bureau of Statistics, released inflation figures showing that the inflation rate increased to 27.3% amid rising food prices. According to that report, the Consumer Price Index, which measures the rate of change in prices of goods and services, rose up from 26.72% in the previous month. That figure marked the 10th consecutive rise in the country's inflation rate this year. Well, joining me now to take a closer look at these macroeconomic indicators is Dr. Ogho Okiti, CEO of Think Business. Great to have you on the show for the first time, Dr. Okiti.
Thank you so much for having me this morning.
So I want to start, first of all, with a broad look at these recent macroeconomic figures. GDP, well, some good news for us, perhaps. What's your take on what this means for the rest of the year and into 2024?
Okay, so GDP doing 2.5%. I mean, first, that is expected. I mean, if you given all the challenges, all the weaknesses in demand, consumers are squeezed. I mean, that is definitely expected. I don't think anyone expected a stronger economic growth in Q3. So, given what it now means, if you recall, in the last quarter, the World Bank and the IMF said that we would do 2.9% at the end of this year. That is not very, very unlikely.
Okay.
Because if you're going to do 2.9%, that means you expect Q4 GDP to be in the region of over 4%. I don't see that happening, given the challenges that we see. So that is definitely going to happen. My focus, or let me say, my priority will not be growth at the moment.
Okay,
my
priority
will be stability.
Okay.
Yes.
Because, and what does that look like?
Yes. Okay, we'll come to that. But the reason why it's important that stability is a priority at the moment is because the reason we're having weak growth in the first place is because of all the challenges around instability, whether it's price, whether it's exchange rate, whether it's the effect of the reforms. So when you look at all those challenges, there's just so much uncertainty in the economy. So what you first of all want to do is to make the economy slightly predictable, so that businesses can look long term. The reason the services sector are doing better than the manufacturing, the trade, and the agri is because the services are services. They can respond very, very quickly. But if you are planting for next 6 months, you're planting for the next 12 months, those are those are the decisions that you don't need rapid change in prices for. So you want to be able to plan ahead 6 months, 1 year, 3 months.
With some price stability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we need that stability, and I believe, yesterday, it was very, very obvious. Everyone understands that we need to deal with that stability, and that is the most critical point today.
Yeah, indeed. And you mentioned price stability. So let's look at the inflation figures. Although the growth rate of inflation has slowed down,
absolutely,
but inflation is still up.
Still high.
So by the time we come to next month's review of figures, what can we expect? Are we going to see these numbers continue to rise and then continue slowing down of the growth rate in inflation?
That is what I expect.
Okay.
I expect, we're doing over 27% now. We have November and December to go.
Right.
My expectation, it will be very, very close to 30% or at least above 28%. That is not the problem. The issue, which is the good news, that is the variation, from month to month, has started to slow down. It means that we may be nearing the peak of inflation very, very soon.
Is that a sign that the MPC instrument is working, is having an impact on inflation?
Well, the MPC instrument is definitely working. However, those are not usually the main issues. The main issues are the ones we're talking about now. The uncertainty, the structural issues, the rigidity, the frictions in the market. Those are the things that really cause all this inflation. And those MPC is good. Since last year, they decided to raise rate until they got to 18.75. The next meeting, will be the first one in the new year now. we don't know the direction of that because we have not had any MPC meeting under the current leadership. So we don't
And we're
know.
not going to have any. They've made
This
that
year.
very clear. This year.
We're not going to have
This
any
year.
this year. So we don't know how orthodox they see inflation. I see it as a bit of orthodoxy and, of course, some structural. So you have to really, really balance it. So I don't know what the direction will be. However, what is very, very clear is that the rate of inflation is not rising as it used to rise. So what it means is that we should begin to see some decline in the rate of inflation next year. And hopefully 2025, if we are able to get stability in place, we can then begin to see something in the region of the 15, 14, 13%. However, next year, I think it will still be very, very high. How high it will be, I don't think it will be as high as the 27,
Do you have what sort of figures are we talking about? We'll still be in double digits, obviously.
Definitely. Even probably to 2025 will be in double digits.
Yeah.
And the CBN governor actually spoke about explicit inflation target. Yesterday. So we don't know what that target. They said they're having conversations with the fiscal policy side. We don't know what that target will be. However, I think in the short to medium term, we're going to have high inflation next year in double digits. My concern is the policies, the measures, and the things they put in place now for the medium term, which is sometime from 2025.
Right.
So how do you deal with deficit? How do you deal with debt? How do you slow down the growth of deficit and debts? Those are the very, very critical fiscal planks that I believe they need to work on now. If we can get those ones in place, then we can begin to see everything coming together, either in relation to price stability and, of course, exchange rate stability.
Yeah, and I just want to talk a bit more about the sectors. You know, agriculture grew a bit. Obviously, we're not where we need to be, 1.3%. It's giving that it's probably the biggest employer of labor around, in addition to manufacturing.
In the rural areas, yes.
Yeah, in the rural areas. You know, what else can we do to really kickstart that sector? As a driver of sustainable growth.
Okay, so let me tell you what someone said to me about talking to an agricultural expert a few weeks ago. And she said to me that planting, that's the planting season. They were just entering the planting season then. Now is the nearing harvest. That wasn't going to be good. I said, why? Is it because to even get the input prices are very, very high? And of course, fuel prices are very, very high. So even if you have irrigation facilities to even fuel the irrigation facilities, irrigation machines, you need fuel. So when you have high rice prices in terms of inputs, and of course in terms of fuel, these farmers can actually plant as much as they would love to. So I am not surprised in what agriculture is doing. In the short term, we can only deal with agriculture with the measures that we have in place. But in the long term, you really, really have to do, in my own opinion, large-scale farming. There's this notion about small-scale orders farming, and I do understand that. But however, if you really, really want to scale, you want to grow agriculture at a level that you really want to feed Nigeria, feed Africa, then you have to really, really engage massive, big companies, big agricultural companies, or find a means to aggregate the smallholder farmers and ensure that they have access to the same inputs, the same services, and then when you bring all of them together, it looks as if they are operating in a scale. But when you have all these 1 or 2 acre farmers, I don't think Nigeria can go far with that strategy.
Yeah.
So for me, I would engage top big farmers. That is the way to go.
Yeah. And of course, access to credit and
yes.
supply chain stability and logistics is key. But before we go, I just wanted to get your thoughts very briefly on the CBN governor's speech last night, which the whole world's kind of been waiting with bated breath for it. Your thoughts, generally, your main takeaway from it?
For me, I genuinely think it was a great speech.
Okay.
I genuinely think so. And there are 4 takeaways for me. And I kind of expected the first one, and I'm not surprised it was the first thing he said. You need to raise bank capital. If you look at what has happened, in the last few years, whether it's from exchange rates and, of course, prices, that would have squeezed banks' capital. So you need to do something. You need to do something in the medium term. Obviously, it's not talking about this year, but you need to do something in the medium term. And the manner, the method, and the time span that they have, I think, is a good thing because you are already preempting, you're already having that conversation, and I think that is just fantastic. The second thing, that the central bank will focus on price stability. Perfect. I mean, that is just what the music I like to hear, because I believe previous leadership of the central bank has been distracted by trying to be all things to all men. I mean, I understand. I mean, you see so many challenges and you want to solve all of them at the same time. However, it is important that you focus on your own core function, which is price stability. Does that mean that you cannot provide some help? You can provide some help. However, he said that they'll focus on price stability. I think that is good. The third one in my own, which is also related to the second one, the CBN is not going to have an extended or overreach quasi-fiscal policy. That is great. I mean, because all the Cobra, power, media, I mean, so everything, there are just so many things to, so many. And of course, the fourth one, which was actually the surprising one for me, the monetary policy under him will have a human face. It's not common to hear monetary policy having human face, and especially when you're looking at all the metrics. But for me, I think mentioning that is actually very, very important. So those are my 4 takeaways, and I think the governor is on the right path. However, I will say this, it needs the help of fiscal policy.
Yeah,
it needs the help. It cannot achieve all these things. In the short term, we probably can get some stability. However, in the long term, 2 things need to happen in the fiscal policy, and I quickly say the hand this. One, debts and deficits need to slow. Second, the president just established the MoFi board. That is the good way to go in terms of long-term capital. Thank you
very much, Dr. Ogho Okiti. And of course, Wale Edun was there with him as his partner on this journey.
Yes.